Several months back, JSAUX sent over to me their Steam Deck dock, which I reviewed and I have been using ever since. I've really had no problems with this thing at all. It does the job very, very well, but perhaps for some people, it's not as exciting as maybe you would like for it to be. And if you're one of those people, they have a new product that they sent over. They're calling this the 8-in-1 RGB Docking Station because we must RGB all of the possible things that we can. It's basically going to serve a very similar function to their old dock, but with a brand new look and feel. You can see here there is a pretty nice assortment of plugs on the bottom. That USB-C port goes to your Steam Deck. There is another USB-C port, HDMI, Ethernet, which is gigabit Ethernet. Good to see. Couple of USB 3.0 ports, and then the power delivery. There's another USB-A actually on the side, and as you can see there's actually a place for your Steam Deck to sit down inside this dock. Because of course it's not just a very large USB hub, it is actually a dock as well. It does have that spot for your Steam Deck to sit in there. This thing is going to retail for $59.99, and the build quality I think is fairly decent. It's not the best feeling thing in the world. It does feel a little bit light. In particular, the spot that pops out where your Steam Deck sits does feel a little bit more flimsy than I would like for it to feel. Their original dock, which I've already talked about very briefly, was a much better build quality. It felt much more solid than this thing does. So I do feel like you're giving up some build quality in exchange for the RGB lights, so forth and so on. They do have, like you can see here on the screen, several different things you can do to customize the lights. We'll dive into that in just a minute as well. So the first thing I immediately did is plugged it into the setup I had plugged into my old JSAUX dock, which was the official charger, as well as a USB dongle for a mouse and keyboard, as well as an external OLED monitor, and all that stuff fired up and began working immediately, charging at full speed. No warning about charging slowly. The pass-through is working just fine, which I believe that it said. It's meant to be 100 watt of power pass-through, so no surprises there. And of course, as you can see in that video, the monitor is working just fine as well. So everything appears to be working fine. I do need to plug in an Ethernet cable real quick and see how that's going as well. So of course, I jumped into desktop mode, pulled up my browser of choice, loaded up speedtest.net, and the results I got are pretty much exactly what you would hope to be getting. I'm getting full speed on my internet connection. I have fiber from my local utility board, and I'm getting close to 900 megabytes down and pretty much the full speed of what I'm getting, what I would expect to see over Ethernet. So a big check mark on the Ethernet port there. Really no surprises. It should be working like that, but good to see that it is working quite well. Really, the only complaints I have so far about this thing really come down to the build quality. You can kind of maybe hear and see it just doesn't have like a confidence-inspiring sound or build quality to it. Sort of a plasticky feeling. It is rubberized on the bottom, so it shouldn't slide around too much. But again, it just has this sort of plasticky thing going on. There's also sort of like a weight distribution issue. Like when you put your Steam Deck in it, until it like leans back, it kind of wants to lean forward like that, which I don't necessarily love. Like nothing's gonna happen, I don't think, but it just doesn't feel like it needs to be heavier back here. And again, this might come down to the build quality. If this weren't plastic, if this was something heavier, it might counterbalance a little bit better. So this is kind of a weird decision too. They've angled the plug that it comes with, which is like seemingly fine, but it means you're gonna go sideways, which means you're either gonna be covering up your power button, so that's a no-go, or you're gonna go this way, and then you're gonna be covering up your air vents, which probably not gonna really be a problem, but it doesn't feel like that's what you would wanna do. So I guess now we need to try and customize the lighting, and I don't see a link anywhere on this page. Maybe I'm just missing it, but I don't see a link anywhere, but it does reference OpenRGB software. So I guess I'm just gonna Google that because I guess that's a thing. Here's a website. So we're gonna download this software that I guess is fine. We have a zip file we've extracted into a folder, and I don't know if this actually installs. Maybe it just runs. Okay, so we have this, and it's actually seeing my mouse and keyboard. Let's plug the dock into my computer. I'm gonna use the port labeled USB in. I hope that that's the one. It has lit up, so we're going to assume that that's correct. Rescan devices, and we have the dock. Okay, so This is actually working relatively easily. So I've made it all one color. I'll let you guys kind of just see what I'm doing here. So this should, in theory, change the color. Like, let's go like full blue. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm changing the color of it by moving these things around. And apparently you can do like by zone. So let's do like purple there, but that looks like that's done the entire dock zone. It doesn't look to me like... No, okay, no. I'm blue over here now. So you can actually go and do this like by area. That's actually pretty cool. And then you've got a breathing, rainbow wave, spectrum cycle, race cycle. That's a little bit much for me. And then stacking. So a lot of these are a little bit much for me. I think I'd probably just set a color and just probably let it be. But you can do a lot with this. I'm assuming I'm going to hit save profile, and I'm just going to call this, no, I'm going to call this pink because that's what I've made it. And I'm hoping that that means when I unplug it and plug it back into power, it's going to stay pink. It didn't. So I'm assuming the software needs to be running literally on the device on the Steam Deck. So we're in desktop mode. We went into the little Discover thing and we're installing OpenRGB that way. Okay, the app looks pretty much identical, and if I move my Steam Deck here, you can see that it has done exactly what you would want it to do. I've saved my profile, but now here's what I'm wondering. I've closed it, and we're still pink down there, closing out of stuff. I'm going to come down here, and we're going to do return to gaming mode, and what I'm worried is going to happen is I'm worried that this thing is going to like default back to the other color when I go into gaming mode. Maybe it'll hold steady. We'll find out together. Okay, we have booted back into the gaming mode. As you can see there on my external monitor, and we are still the correct color. So that's the methodology. That's how you're going to do it. Install OpenRGB in the Discover application, set up your thing the way you want it. But just be aware that if I ever unplug the power from this thing and plug it back in, I'm going to be back to the default colors. Overall, I think it is a decent product. You're talking about $60, so it's not necessarily cheap, but it does look pretty nice. So once you get it set up, you can have a pretty decent looking appearance to this thing. There are some weak points, right? The fact that when you unplug it and plug it back in, you're losing your setup. The fact that it does feel a little bit on the cheaper side, but it does everything it's supposed to do, right? It does do the HDMI stuff just fine. The USB ports are working just fine. Ethernet is quick. So all that stuff is good. The charging is absolutely fine. I would recommend maybe using like a regular USB cable and maybe get an angled plug that angles like the right direction. I don't really know why they went with that direction on that one, but the correct direction on their old dock, that makes way more sense. Kind of strange in that regard. So definitely some places where it's rough around the edges, but I guess now you know what to expect from it. I'm going to drop an affiliate link in the description down below. If you click on it and purchase this thing, I'm going to earn commission off of that sale. So do keep that in mind. A good way to help support the channel going forward, guys. A big shout out to JSAUX for sending this dock over. As usual, no money has changed hands for this review, and they are seeing the video at the exact same time as you are. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.